And the Japanese are not, they don't understand what they are doing. You can convert the tritium in a very easy way to against of itself, and I said this months ago. And they don't understand. So why tritium is important in the space technology. You have very much millions and millions of what do you call it, star formations, balance fields, which then they release their energy in the right way. Then you can create any matter you need within the space and find your position anywhere in the universe. At the moment we have CO2. This is creating a problem. The concentration of the plasmas is too much. The other one you have is CuO. Maybe the nearest we ever get to is CH3. But if the Japanese allow us to have access to tritium, oh God, we go ahead by about 50 years in the space technology on this planet. But you have to know how to convert tritium as a matter to a gas to be able to use its properties. Because you have to stabilize the magnetic field of the electron inside as a plasma. Because then you create the same kind of energy fields inside the plasma, which gives you, in conjunction with the others, the star formation. Because don't forget, the GANs of the matter is one plasma, but it behaves as in matter condition, so it still behaves as a star formation. We have achieved some major breakthroughs, which we are trying to reconfirm and retest and reevaluate. At the moment, we have seen huge Tesla readings. We have asked the operators and developers of the system to retest, to reconfirm the correctness of the equipment. There is a very, very large cumulative reading on the on the Z-axis, which is the field radiation coming out of the free plasma within the cores setup. This has risen a huge question mark in the world of plasma technology at the moment. I know I have spoken with the scientists at Las Almas. They consider it not to be correct. You cannot produce energy or magnetic field at this level with the equipments which we have. But as I explained to the scientists, and as you know, we have informed the Iranian government at the presidential level of the breakthrough. We have informed the Italian nuclear center, the Italian government of the breakthrough. The American security, national security is aware of the development because it has a huge implication. And at the same time, the Russian and the Chinese are fully informed of the development. The reason we have taken this step is that if you can deliver 129 Tesla in bursts, you can literally destroy every satellite system within the boundary of the certain distance from the Earth. So it has a huge application if you can direct it. On the other hand, this brings what was the target of the Keshe Foundation World Peace Treaty one step closer. Let me explain to you scientifically what has happened. That's why it's not acceptable to a lot of scientists of the present, what I call world of physics plasma. Not the plasma technology as we work, and we call it the new technology, independent from the physics plasma or a medical plasma. At the moment, according to the Las Almas, I spoke with the scientists, they've used 1.4 gigawatt of energy to produce, for a fraction of a second, a pulse of 100.7 Tesla. According to them, the magnets which they use, they explained to me the whole setup, how they've done it. I was on the line with them for quite a bit. And the magnets which they use were totally destroyed. This took years of development to get to this point, and they say they can repeat it. But you have to I can hear myself again. Just 1 second. Are you off? It's Marco. Yeah? Okay. So what has happened in fact is that they had to use such a huge amount of energy to be able to package an energy pack of 100 Tesla. But go back in what you've done and what you studied, what you've developed, and what we taught from the beginning. Ganses are dynamic plasmatic magnetic field balls, billions of them in each reactor, and we have 4 of them. So, good morning, our American friend has arrived. Good morning, Armin. Where's your coffee cup? Oh, you forgot. No problem. Armin just arrived. So, what it is that's why they have a problem to understand this development, and to them is not realistic. But as I said, when you have billions and millions of the small plasmas hitting each other in the dynamic condition the motor we created, releasing and interacting of these fields together is a natural process. They are thinking and working on the electron level and photons. We are working on gravitational magnetic field interaction, the way it happens in the universe. So this has shown clearly, and now we have asked other organizations to come and verify it independently. We hope we are correct, and we think we are correct, is that the gravitational magnetic field of 4 small reactors are interacting with each other in a specific formation that they create their own condition for creation of the dynamic plasma, which absorbs any surplus magnetic fields which is released continuously by the other 4. So the free plasma, which is within the structure of the setup, is in fact a real replication of very much, we will show in time to come, on neutrons. If you know how to release the energy from this free plasma, it can release energy in microtesla to a neutron star. And this process will explain as is needed. That's why one of the reasons we inform the government. People who are involved in satellite defense from high magnetic fields will feel the effect of these reactors as they operate and they take off into space. And then you don't want to have interference with all the satellite equipment which is sitting and billions has been spent to make life for mankind easier. So what happens? In fact, in the center of this imaginary plasma or sits a very powerful principal star, because all these fields have to be absorbed. The pulses which we see at such a huge amount is when the free plasma, as we showed it on the bar last time, moves and it comes in touch with the center bar, which is the nano-coated. The interaction between the plasma, dynamic plasma, and a matter environment releases these high bursts. Now you understand how correct and why you're seeing these bursts. So, in fact, as the 4 reactors are not totally tuned to be in a perfect loading, because the loading measurement is done by Arman, it's just by the syringe at the moment, and he decides if there are enough in each. There is a slight difference between each reactor. So as the fields are built up, the free reactor in the center of the pyramid moves along in different directions. We have fixed the plate for not to interact and the Earth gravitational field to push the plate to go off center. That's why suddenly when we fix the plate with the 4 reactors, that the vibration of the magnetic gravitational field was blocked, we start seeing such a huge rises, because now whatever was making the plate to move, now it has to be released. Now that we've done this, now all the 4 reactors are fixed position. They cannot be moved. Position in respect to Earth magnetic gravitational field is more or less fixed. I still see some vibrations. The only thing which is left now is fixing the free plasma from moving out of the center. In fact, it doesn't move out of the center. As it comes in touch with the gravitational magnetic nano-coated material on the bar, it's just like grinding a sandpaper with a knife. You see the sparks. These sparks are the peaks you see. There is a process which is happening. I've seen it, and hopefully we try to correct it as we switch the cameras off later on today to reset the whole structure, trying to avoid this condition of release of plasmas. So what you observe at 129 Tesla, once it's confirmed by independent scientists, should be about right, and we can build up on it. There is a point here. Every time we start, we go back from 0, where in fact we should be reading the total amount at the point of every reading. This is one of the questions I have put to the manufacturers yesterday. So, on the other hand, when you look at the graphs of the reading, for the first time, I was looking at it last night, has moved into the positive above 0 by 3, 4, and 5 millitesla. So there are some changes where before X, Y, and Z were used to be always below 0. On the other hand, what we see is that the increase in the dynamic fields, in some cases because you only see the peaks, leads to the reduction in the weight of the system. This creates, if you're scientifically trained, you should understand this creates a big problem. Because your detectors are giving you a position, field strength in a free environment. But the scale is measuring inertia mass condition in the environment. That's why there is an understanding. I explain this later on. This is a difference between the mass and the weight, and then at the same time interaction of the field, which does not exist but influences the weight and the conditions, like very much like a wind on a scale. If you have very strong wind, you can reduce the weight if you keep it in the right direction on the mass which is on the scale. There is these things I will explain as we come to it in the coming time. So one of the points which is fundamentally different and is changed is not just the weight. In the teaching of yesterday with the children, I brought this in a very much in the front for the children to understand. And Rick tells me this morning it was a bit too much for children to understand. Now we go through it in a different way, but very in a similar way. in explaining this, in for people to understand what is happening. A plasma is a free dimension. Wait, I've just received, Armand wants me to receive to tell you.
Sorry, what was that, Mr. Keshe? I didn't catch that
I
last
don't know,
sentence.
Armand has put something. I don't understand what it means. You have to let me read this afterwards, because now I cannot read it. I don't know what it means. It's somebody's theory. He assumes, and he wants us, we got to see what his assumptions are.
Okay.
So what has happened is that each reactor is independently creating its own gravitational magnetic field. Each reactor interacts with its next door neighbor reactor plus the collective fields of all the other three. So the ball inside is very much a spherical hexagonal shape. And it depends how it's pushed by which field. You distracted my line of thoughts. So what happens is that the magnetic fields from the free plasma now itself interacts with the other four plasmas in the cores. So even though the four reactors fields being magnetical and gravitational lead to creation of the free plasma environment in the center of the pyramid, now this free plasma as an entity becomes to interact with the other four too. And at the same time, because it's receiving continuously residual field flow, both gravitational and magnetic field from four sources, which are nearest to him plus from the environment, it becomes strong enough, it should become strong enough to interact as a total representation of the 5 reactors in respect to the gravitational magnetic field of the Earth. And that's why you see the changes in the scale, in the weight. And sometimes it does not make sense, because you are looking at the weight of the whole system as it's hanging from the hook, but an imaginary space, a free space plasma is dictating the condition. And it depends where it's moving to, it dictates the weight loss or a weight gain. We see this now because we switched the cameras off in the lab for bandwidth problems. You've seen it since yesterday. There are no motors running. There are literally no electrical systems which are running except 2 small pumps, which are testing a light system which Marco is developing. There are no electronic things running in their labs. And we have seen drops in weight since yesterday. And is coming to near enough to 11.16, which was the original weight where we started it. If you've seen, the weight was in 13 kilogram, 12 kilogram, and went to 13.8 kilogram, went down to 10.6 kilogram. Those interactions is enforced on the plasma. Now the plasma, the free plasma, is accepting its condition in respect to the Earth gravitational magnetic field and settling at about the same figure at 11.2, 11.16. What does this mean? This goes back to the teaching we said. First of all, the frame and the mass outside the parameters of the reactor are connected beyond the fields of the reactor effective environment, which is its atmosphere, its magnetosphere atmosphere. So they are holding it, they are dictating the position. This dictation of the position by hopefully tomorrow should be sorted, because we are putting the reactor on a stacker system, which means we'll be independent of the environment. On the other hand, the whole free reactor is still interacting with the other reactors, which is about 9 of them around the lab, with their fields, with their plasmas, with their ganses. So it is still influenced by the environment, not by itself. Very, very interesting point. As a lot of you know, on Tuesday lunchtime, we asked Armand and Marco to take charge over the running of the reactor independent of the motors. This process in talks last workshop, last Thursday, I said it, and if you listen to it, it was mentioned it's going to be done. And it was just as usual, just people listen as to a talk. But everything I say has a meaning and a reason when I say it. In the talk last week, I said soon that we're going to have the reactors to be run. In the past few months, we indicated and we explained that the control of the plasmatic reactors through matter-based like electronics and computer will not be able to be done, because it's so fast and it's so powerful that electrons have no effect on dictating the condition of the plasma, which is a mother plasma. As I say to children, a little 2 years old cannot move a 40-year-old elephant. Is that difference? It has no effect. Electronic systems have no effect on running and controlling the condition of the plasma. And in time, when you see the fields go beyond the boundary of each reactor, that you can see its interaction as a totality, you find out that you can't even communicate through the electronics to run the system to motors. This is why we're bringing everything into the stacker unit. That we are within the system, at least we might have some control over the motors. So, as I said last week, and now on Tuesday, to the surprise of Armand and Mark and Marco, they were asked to take charge over the running of the reactors through their thoughts and not through electronic means. This was some point of apprehension and excitement between the two. So to settle the situation, I asked them to leave their premises and try to control and come back about 3 hours later. We monitored the operation within that 3 hours. In one point we could see joint feeling, because both I knew what their thoughts were, and we saw changes on the scale. When they came back at 3 o'clock, known to them what they were doing a couple of weeks ago, I asked them to make 2 keys. These keys are built to control the reactors. And they've been on the table for a couple of weeks and they thought it's forgotten. These keys we tested about a week, 2 weeks ago with Arman going outside the lab and trying to see how it can interact with the reactor cores. Each one was given 1 key and was sent home. Go and do whatever you like, cook, drive, sleep, whatever. But I asked them to write down who's in command, and when you're in command, you hold the key in your hand, otherwise you keep it away or put it in your pocket. And then I monitored overnight the development, the increase, the decrease, and changes in the whole scale of the work. If you go on a live stream, you see that when Marco was in command till 8 o'clock, we lost a lot of weight very rapidly. 280 grams, 300 grams. When Arman came on, the losses became slower. And even sometimes there were no changes because he was asleep. And again, if you go on the live stream, I made a couple of small comments during the night and early mornings that Arman is asleep and blah blah, and you immediately saw a drop in a mass, in a weight. We have access to change, but we have access to change through the emotion and the feeling, not necessarily touching the system, because I was away, at least 100 meters away from the lab. If you check the writings where I wrote and I refer to Arman or asleep or whatever, you see immediately within milliseconds changes. This was done deliberately to show we even control the emotion and the feeling control of another body through the system. There is a huge explanation in what is about to be explained. When they came back about 10 o'clock yesterday, I gave them 2 hours. And I said, now for next 2 hours, 1 hour each, you are near the building, try to control. They never saw the screen, they were not aware of what's happening. The important thing was to see how their effects and the emotions and thoughts can affect the system. We were not looking for high pulse numbers. I was looking for behavior. A lot of you looked for numbers. Oh, it's going down, Arman is asleep, the other one is doing, oh, he's having a coffee. It's nice to see. But what was the whole plan was to understand behind it the behavior of the controllers. And then at 1 o'clock, we took the keys back from them. And the keys are in my pocket. So if you go back on the readings, we finished by 1 o'clock. And then next week I explain exactly what has happened. Now the 2 are not in charge, but in fact they are emotionally connected. The whole structure is very simple. The line of communication, computers and all the latest gadgets in material world, in the world of physics of matter, in a space operation is obsolete. What happens? I explained this yesterday in the children's presentation. If you haven't seen it, I explained that each plasma is made of gravitational magnetic fields, very much as you see it. At the same time, 2 plasmas to connect to each other, they have their own fields which they interact. The interaction of the fields happens on magnetic gravitational level. What does this mean? There is no electrons. What this sends out as a field, in fact, is very much picked up by the other. So the two fields are interconnected through the magnetic fields of each other. In reality, what we see, what comes from the north of one or the exit of one ends up with the entry of the other. So the field interaction crosses each other. What happens? Magnetical field is slightly different in the strength than gravitational field strength. So the two never, in fact, what you call delete each other out, but they still have interaction. So what is sent out on a magnetical field by the magnetical fields of one is received immediately by the other. And what is sent out as a magnetical field by one, at the point of equality in the strength, is taken over by gravitational magnetic field of the receiver. So as this pushes away, at the instance will be picked up by the second one by gravitational. So communication is instantaneous. And is the same the other way. When the other one sends the fields through magnetical, at the point of balance of the two fields, the gravitational field of the other one pulls. So zero-time communication is upon us. Because electrons take too much at the moment to send a message to all the latest mechanical electronic systems from here to Moon is few seconds. To Mars, few seconds. If you understand this concept, if you are in a communication system, and you can use the properties of the GANs in interaction with nano layers, you should be able to make zero-time nano machines, computers, communication lines within the coming time. This changes the whole world of communication. This is what I said, none of this technology can be patented. Now, you be anywhere in part of the universe, because the gravitational magnetic fields can go from one strength to another according to the point of gravitation, you move in by the order of magnitude without any losses. So it doesn't matter if you are at the boundary of the universe or you're on Earth, what you say is heard instantaneously. At the moment, those who are familiar with the world of electronics, you see everything is adjusted that the voice matches the picture by the time it arrives, even though we know the voice arrives a few seconds later than the picture. They've synchronized it. With this technology, there is no need for a synchronization. The plasma technology, the ganses which you produce as a plasma, brings in a new game in communication in the world of the technology of man's interaction with others. But at the same time has a huge application. The application is, now that the man is trained to look and understand this way, which he could not see, now you can read each other's thought, even with the machine. Each other's intention. So you can feel, you can have a machine very soon. We've done it here now, we've shown it practically done with the machines, with the thoughts controlling the system. That you know what is the intention of the guy when he says hello to you. Is he a friend or is he there to rob you? Is he there to shake hands as a president of the major government to create war? Or is he there to sincerely help your nation? The false handshakes and promises is over. The way now we put detectors to see who's going through the ports with the temperature that they can bring Ebola, the same kind of detectors will tell the authorities who's planning to do what activities and what are the intentions. This is why 3-4 weeks ago I called on the world governments to talk about and come to understand the application of this technology in respect to what's happening in killings, in mayhems by terrorism and the rest. This technology will change and change the core of the whole structure of how man lives and operates at the moment. When we talked, it was a talk. Now we start showing it. You've seen it in the past 24, 48 hours. You've seen how very less than 1 or 2 grams, there's a dispute between me and Arman, let's say 5 grams of gas material can reduce and create 3 kilograms of weight. That's, let's say 2,500 grams for 5 grams of material, which is never going to be destroyed, and it's still 5 grams for the time to be as long as the man and his ancestors live on this planet. We have not destroyed a single entity. We have used the conditions that the entities have created through gravitational magnetic field in advantage and the use of man. So the time of burning fuel is over. A lot of people write to me, can you give us the free energy? Arman has the system sitting in the lab. And in the coming weeks, we will show you how you can create as much free energy as you like at home. But that will not solve your problem. That just begins your problem. Your biggest nightmare is when you're going to have the free energy. The biggest revolution and evolution in man's history will come when within coming weeks we teach you how to create these systems and produce energy through very, very simple systems. Most of people have a pressure cooker in the house. With a pressure cooker, I show you how you can have everything you want. But don't forget the way I talk. When I said with 2 mobile phones you can have everything you want, you were looking for water dripping and gold dripping from the mobile phone and all the energy. So we opened the packages of it. And you understood the copper layers in the battery are your source of energy. In a coming time, when your knowledge becomes further, you will hold on like gold to the pressure cookers which you're not using and has been there from grandma's time in the cupboard. When we build the system, when we show it, then you understand it why. Because by then, most of the knowledge of the plasma will come together for you to be able to reach the next step. Our target is not here to achieve lift and show energy. Our target here is to teach that everybody understands that we move collectively together. This is very similar, and we are, as of this week, coming weeks, we cross language barriers, that not everything is in English. I have spoken with the Chinese Keshe Foundation group, and hopefully we already had a couple of hour session this last Monday. From next Monday, with the help of the people at the live stream, we will teach in Chinese, and it gets translated by the scientists and the knowledgeable scientists in China, that instantaneously we see to what they need to do, because they have achieved the step breakthroughs in agriculture, and now we speak with them in their language. And then we open the agriculture through the Keshe Foundation China. they need to gain some confidence, and then when they come in, you see how the changes will come. They have grown seeds. We had a talk with a gentleman who was doing it and the way it's been done. We have a gentleman in Europe who's developed the Keshe Foundation seeds for the Keshe Foundation, and we have connection with the agricultural center in Africa to actually do mass production or mass growth of the materials in Africa. The structure is coming together. Tomorrow I'm speaking with the Mexico Keshe Foundation organization. The people flown in today. There is a conference or a small meeting going on in Mexico City with the Keshe Foundations of Spanish speaking Mexico with the scientists. And tomorrow we organize the teaching in the Spanish. This technology is not limited to any language, race or color. So now you understand. You do not need to know Spanish to understand what the Chinese guy is talking about. You know his intention and you know his needs, because now with this technology, in a very, very short time, the electronic wizards will come up with the computer wizards to develop these technologies. We already received a request from multinational organizations of scientists based in Hong Kong and China, and we responded to them. We are prepared to talk. We do not usually respond to organizations who approach us, but we check, and if it is in that level, and they work with the same philosophy as the Keshe Foundation. Free sourcing, which means free patterns everybody can use. So now a little test in past 48 hours in the foundation, as I said, has changed the course of humanity. As I was talking yesterday to the children in the program, a lot of us remember 1844, first telephone call of Bell. Past 48 hours, we registered in the same manner in the history of man. Two people communicating through their thoughts with a machine and dictating his thoughts in a free way. You got to understand what was given to instructions to the knowledge seekers. You don't take and you don't give, you wish and you had to come. And still you saw pitfalls. When the wishes to fly was so powerful, instead of wish, it became a demand and the system failed. This is how you operate in the space technology of the future. I desire to save and be what I am, and I want to be in a position where I want to be. If you understand, as I say, read the book number 3. The size of this universe is dictated by the gravitational magnetic fields of the other universes which is within, and it cannot expand beyond that if it's not allowed to by other field forces. It's very much like putting a balloon in a room full of balloons. The shape, the position of the balloon is dictated by the other balloons which are in the room. This is the same with the plasma. So the condition and the position which your system is allowed to move in is dictated by what other fields allow you to move in. They accommodate you. Even you think you can go with the 10,000 times speed of light and you can enforce it. If the fields are not there to allow the accommodation, you will not be able to achieve it. This is one of the reasons the reactors are still on the floor in the lab. This is why the time with Marco losses were more rapid. I asked him yesterday when he came back, explain to me what you felt and what you wanted and what was your feeling. He told me in a simple word, Armand wanted to fly, so I helped him. Am I correct, Marco? So, what does this mean? unity in action, being equal, not taking and not giving. That's why Marco and Armin are chosen to be as a what do you call it, joint equal partners in this development part of the section. We have stopped every kind of research here till this is completed. So Marco, with a feeling of I accommodate, made the accommodation, and the loss were very rapid. And the peaks came in a different way. Armin intention wanted, this was a want, I want to fly, I want the systems to fly, because to him is important to show a flight, to justify I'm correct, but he is actually correct, because he built the systems, but he hasn't realized that yet. And when the two come in balance between the two controllers and the system become equal to them and will take their wishes. The system will sit on the floor till these two decide we are equal with the system, but at the same time system operates within the environment, so we have to get a permission. It's different than you asking for a piece of bread with demand, and you asking for a piece of bread with request of pleasure. A piece of bread is thrown at you, or a piece of bread is given by two hands to you. It's trust. I'm safe, you are correct. This goes back to the ethos of the Japanese culture and the Chinese culture mainly. Our Chinese colleagues tell you, what I learned with the Chinese over years of being in interaction and being with them, if you give money with one hand to a person, he will count it. Because you are not sure, he is not sure. So there is no dispute, we accommodate each other. But if you give money with two hands and it's received with two hands, the man will never count, which means I trust everything is safe. This is how it has to be, and how the fields operate. The two hands is gravitational magnetic field. Gravitational and magnetic field is we give it two hands and we find accommodation. We trust, we find balance. There's a lot in the cultures the man has forgotten why. And that's why in the West we just put the money on the counter, because we don't even trust handing over, because the guy might have a Ebola or a disease. So the operation of these magnetic gravitational field plasmas are not just for the physical motion, but understanding the emotion in the behavior of the man too. And now, as we said yesterday, talking here, you become the judge of your own behavior and you try to find balance and correctness. So we are going towards one step toward the world peace. What does this mean? When you are in charge, when you know is it correct, there is no need for laws and books to be written in different religions and languages of the punishment, because you are aware of your own doing, so you do not do wrong because you know it'll be rejected with two hands. Now we show the work of the plasma in the operation of the man's work of life. This is where the society has to learn, and in a very simple way, in the coming days and weeks, those who've been waiting and wishing to see the fresh light and left, you will see when you're all ready to receive the knowledge collectively for the world peace. Because when this gift is given, cannot be retracted, and when this gift is accepted, has to be on the basis of world peace and universal peace. Nations who have it are calling and claiming for peace. Tomorrow in the medical section is about the bone marrow and heart, or bone and heart. Then we'll show you how, with what we're going to release, will change the course of the humanity in so many ways for the present time. I said if I have to take you off brick by brick, I will do. And now we'll start taking the bricks off. And then when you take the foundation away, the whole structure, doesn't matter how big it is, will collapse under it. Because now we start showing you. You've seen in a very simple way how plasmas communicate and how we can detect your emotions and your feelings, and how your emotions and feelings can operate system. Let's say this is a reactor. And let's say this is the GANs in the reactor. If you want to change the speed of the plasmatic flow, or as Mark likes to say, this gradient, you cannot increase the speed of rotation. The speed of rotation means nothing. But how you speed up the rotation of the plasma, not the core, is by injection of plasmatic gravitational current in the inner layers of the ganses. So what you do, in a way, by changing it, if you know which one you can increase, now the core GANs become here than being here. As you come to the center, your power increases by the factor. Then you go, for example, at the speed of light in this layer to 1,000 times the speed of light in this layer. So you change the strength of your plasma, and in interaction with the other field in the environment through change and injection of the gravitational magnetic field, plasma or current into the plasma. So it's instantaneous. You don't need to wait and increase your speed from 10,000 to 20,000 or whatever. That is when you're dealing with matter inertia. Even though the plasma itself has its own inertia, by impulse, by increasing gravitational magnetic field impulse or reducing magnetical side of the impulse, you decide in what layer and how you push your GANs materials. So again, even though you sit in a core, you still have that gradient by the order of magnitude in reverse. So at this level, you're at the speed of light, 1. At this level, you are a speed of light by 100. Here, you're by 10,000. So through impulse of the fields, you change the position and the strength of your magnetic field plasma, and you dictate. Then here, you can go into the further distance galaxies or the stars, where here you want to go within a galaxy. So the impulse of the current flow of plasmatic magnetic field within the reactor gives you instant reaction in where you want to. In a way, you open or you kick or you bring the plasma towards the center or away from the center. And this will, in time, I'll show you how it's done. Then it dictates the speed of the motion. And so you don't need to increase the rotation, and you don't need to, what do you call it, go into the physical condition to create it. You create it with that the pulse or current flow. When we talk about the current in plasma, we are talking about maglev current. We are not talking about electron or electrical current. Unless I indicate that we are talking about the electric current, every time I speak about the current, we're talking about plasmatic, which is gravitational magnetic field. Then you suddenly increase your speed, or you extract the plasma of the GANs to the center, and then you go up by the order of magnitude. One of the things which is very easy for you at the moment as we work with the water and matter and GANs is that in the core, which we see, the copper core, we have a center which is nano-coated, and then we have a reactor, and then here, when, as we just seen with the core of Rick, we have a nano layer like this, which goes to the extremes. What do you see? This is that. And in the middle, we have water between this and this. This is full with water. This is what we extract, and we increase the amount of CO2. This water, once it gets to this condition, is not water in a matter state, is the water in a GANs state, and behaves that way. Even though we extract it as water, but this water behaves as a GANs. It does not have a property of a matter. It has the property of the GANs of the water. This is what we spoke last week with the health section, with the teaching with the lung. Once you breathe air in, the minute the air touches the liquid, this liquid, because it's produced in conjunction with the nano layers and the shape of the lung, converts the matter state of the what you breathe in to the GANs of itself, of that matter. So the liquid here itself in the reactor, because it's a gravitational magnetic field, is gravitational magnetic field, so it shows its property as a gravitational magnetic field, not as an atomic structure in physics. So here the water is totally in a GANs behavior state while it's in the reactor. And if
is it a different GANs state than the what GANs you have in there, or is it the same structure?
It's the same structure, but the behavior becomes GANs. The behavior is GANs. It's very much like
the same structure as water, but the behavior is GANs.
Behavior GANs. It's the same as the blood. While the blood is in your vein, behaves as a GANs of blood. You extract it for blood test. It behaves as the matter of it. That's why you can measure and say there is so much calcium, there is so much potassium, you have so much whatever in your blood. Because once the body inside is in a vacuum condition, and when you extract the blood, it has to behave in a matter condition of the environment. As the second you extract the blood from the vein and leaves the extremity of the physical body, it changes back into the matter condition, because now you have an electron and a proton. But while it's in the blood, it behaves exactly like a GANs. That's what I said. When it's a GANs, you see it as one molecule. When it's a matter, you cannot see it, because now it's split into atom and a proton. This is what you got to understand. The behavior in plasma is different than the behavior in the matter and physics condition. And this is one of them. Because now you have two nano layer is gravitational magnetic field. GANs is gravitational magnetic field. And anything in between has to behave the same way. So it changes the behavior, because for the two to link up, they need. Yeah. Yeah. What happened is that the nano layer is in a, what do you call it, maglev state in the center, and the GANs is in a gravitational magnetic field. These two communicate on magnetic gravitational field. And anything in between, because it's so instantaneous, cannot become anything but to change that it can accommodate this transfer of information or energy. So the water is behaving like a gas water, so it uses its gravitational magnet. So what happens, in fact, if this is an electron and a proton of the water, let's say, and
It's
this
the
is
communication point.
it's a no, it's because this is what we call zero instant communication. Here, we work with it. What happens in this state here, we use the Coulomb barrier of the atom, not the Coulomb barrier of the plasma of a proton or electron behavior. Water in this state becomes using its Coulomb barrier, so it behaves as a GANS, as one unit. So the gravitational magnetic field from the GANS on this side and of the nano material coated on this side, they go like this. And they interact in that form. And here interacts in this form. So it does not go as it goes between, it goes in connection in line. So the behavior of the, what do you call it, molecules of water, it's very much in a GANS state interaction, not in a matter state interaction. Because if it was in a matter state interaction, the field forces from them have to move the electron to be able to transfer. Now it uses the field dimension of it, which is instantaneous. So there is no movement of electron. It uses the boundary, the atmosphere, or what we call the Coulomb barrier magnetic field. So the water in this instant behaves as a GANS, but in a matter state. So because this will not merge into this, but the behavior is as a Coulomb barrier magnetic gravitational field. North and south, what you see it as north and the south, north to south, and back to the north of the nanolayer in the middle, in the center, and then the reverse back. And it's instantaneous. So any information, and in fact, what I said in the beginning earlier on, your gravitational magnetic field between the nanolayer, quote, the beam in the center, and the GANS is somewhere here, depending on the strength of which one it is. And one of the pulses you see, except outside bearing, is this trying to find its position. It keeps moving between the two. And then this is behavior of the totality of the plasma. Then, in so many ways, if you look at the structure of the planetary system, you understand as, what do you call it, we saw in the belt at the equator why we have this behavior. Within the, if you look at the, what Rick showed us, I explained to you understand it very, very, very interestingly easy. Rick showed us a ball with a light behind it with a belt. And
on the screen here now, Mr. Keshe.
Yeah. And this belt, because of the balanced gravitational magnetic field, no field more or less enters or exits. Fields exit above this line, fields enter below this line. Anywhere here is in a neutral but collective gravitational magnetic field with any other cells outside. Behaves like an equator. Because here, every cell, every single molecule has found its balance. It's literally a nanolayer. So fields, if you look at the structure, we see gravitational magnetic field of the Earth, they go like this. They actually start at certain point that they can go this way. Because here in neutrality is like a nano-coated. Nothing can enter, nothing can exit. And this is very, very fundamental. It's very important when you start running your reactors in how you, I explained this to the knowledge seekers before, is how you have your four cores in the base and the top, how you change the position of this belt will dictate the direction of the flow of your craft. Because it's this which dictates the position of the free plasma in the middle. If you put 2 now in this direction, your belt, you know how to do it. In time, you'll understand how to do it. So the position now moves here. This becomes your new direction of flow. Don't move things. You move, you create a condition, and the condition gives you the effect you need. This is the time will come, because now when you look at the reactor cores, you look at it as a total inner link, but we have opened it, we've seen it, is in a belt condition. And that's this property of the belt you can use for positioning where you want the central core to be. In the future, this dictates if you want to go to the left, to the right, to the bottom, or to the what do you call it, northwest at such a degree. Because you dictate this belt, position of this belt, and in a way, because this is magnetic gravitational field, instead of being axonal there, now is axonal there. So the 2 axes decide where it's going to be. This is very, very extremely important when it comes to system control and what do you call it, in how you affect your reactors in controlling it individually or collectively.
So what it is, if you get this circle as the sphere of a plasma, of a GANs, and this as a center, the order of the magnitude of the strength goes this way. It reduces that way and increases this way. Here, the order of magnitude is 10. Just below it is 10 to the power of 10. Just below that is a 10 to the power of 1,000. And then when you go slightly inner, is a power of 1,000,000. This is what you have to understand. It is totally different than what we are used to. So now, if you can create gravitational magnetic field strength of this, you are traveling at 1,000,000 times the speed of light. Because now the fields at this strength will pull and push you to a position. At the moment you are walking at here what we call the speed of sound and below. And this is what restriction Einstein has put, and God I wish he would have never written this paper. He has caused so much problem for the world of physics and space technology that's unbelievable. And everybody has accepted this rubbish and we stick to it. A plasma is like the center of the sun. When you go to the center, the plasma is stronger. So you travel at that speed. So when you want to go, this nonsense which has come, it takes 10,000 light years to get to the other planet. What we see as a star, what they call at 10,000 years, is instantaneous. But we don't want to understand it. Our body, our knowledge, our mind recognize it. So we wait for the light time expansion to come. And if you understand this, the way we show the spiral, the central spiral energy is an energy mass which the man cannot even imagine, comprehend. And then when you come to the outer rings, every ring you see, you go lower, go by a magnitude of 1,000, 3 zeros, but that's magnitude order, is not times 3. That means when you go 10 is equal 10. When you go to the 100, it means 10 with 100 zero in front of it. And this is how magnetic field work, and all you need to do is to tune to that field strength. Then you understand, because you travel at the speed is 0 time, 0 communication. This is how the new zero communication tools are developed and getting developed. Brazilians are good at it, they have understood it, and they are developing it. This is part of the Third Reich, which went to development of these things during the Hitler time and afterwards, as the German scientists moved to Brazil. This is not the Brazilian scientists as Brazilians. These are still part of the Third Reich, which have finances to do these developments. We are aware of it because we have come in touch with them, and then partially they sit in Brazilian military and security services, which is part of the structure of World Health Foundation. The understanding is to understand that the plasma, as it goes out per ring, till it gets to the field strength of its gravitational magnetical, which shows the matter surface, by the same order is reversible, by order of magnitude. If this is very hard to understand, stand on Earth and jump up. And then you see how much your gravity changes. It's an order of magnitude. The reverse is the same, but in a much, much, much stronger. When you work with gravitational and magnetical fields, then there is no mystery in the world of creation. You want to be visible at this length, you'll be visible at this length, because the plasma of the amino acids, of the atoms, of the ganses of your body carries it. Now it operates at this level, so too it is normal. Our next space you are in is this one. It's not that you're going to get destroyed, there will be no sign of you, but to the matter level where you are now, you'll be invisible because you work on a high level, because you're in the high environment. So the life will not change in the universe. And this is why one of the reasons I said I make you the fish tank, and I create the dimensions that you can see other entities of life. I promise I'll bring the soul of Christ, bless his name, that you will see. Then there is no place for Pope when the Master is available. That's how you do it. Now we understand the strength field. Now we understand the position in respect to where you want to be visible and in what respect to what matter. At this moment of time, there are numerous what you like to call UFOs. No detector can detect them and nobody can see them, because they have created a balance field around in respect to the Earth atmosphere and beyond Earth atmosphere. You see through them because they are in balance, but they actually exist and stand by. I promised Arman I show him, and he will show it. Because we don't understand it, we don't think it exists. The limitation of understanding comes from the man, not the reality of the creation.
We can go into 2, 3, 400 Tesla. You will see and you understand the reason why in the coming time. Now you can see the work of the plasma in open space. 100, 200 Teslas will become like a apple and pears on every shelf of the scientific world. Cost of producing. I seen Marco telling me to produce, what was it? Few Teslas, how much what they need? Somebody posted so many kilowatts of energy they need to produce it. It's on the live stream apparently. He says you can read it. So you see, with less than 10 watt, we can produce Teslas behind, because we don't do it. We create. This goes back to the essence of communication, understanding the technology. We create the conditions. 20, 25 illnesses on the list. There's something like 20 illnesses which we are researching, and we've done a lot of work in the background. And we try to, by the time tomorrow the list is released by the Keshe Foundation Malta, or KF Foundation at gmail.com, we'll try to give a percentage of the process success. What this means is that we've done so much research, let's say on fibromyalgia, we give the chances of processing 80%. So it means how many? Nearly 40 diseases. The foundation has done research over the past 14, 15 years on, and the knowledge is released and will be released totally to the doctors who will start working and they start monitoring. So from now on, when you're accepted by Keshe Foundation for a disease, to be part of the research, your progress, everything will be monitored by the doctors around the world who work and want to be part of their condition according to the expertise of the scientists and the doctors. A few years ago in Belgium, we had a girl being in university who went blind on a flight from South America, I think, to Belgium. And she was blind for about a year. I understood the process, what she's done and what is gone through. I built a very simple system and I was holding it in my hand and I asked her to come in a dark room with me in the house where we were doing the testing. And I placed the system on the back of her head and she could see. She said she can see again. And when I removed it, she lost her vision. And I said to her, if you want, I can develop a system that you can have your vision back. And strange to my shock, and I think Willy in Belgium can tell you because he knows about it, she's refused. It was a big question for me and other people why a young girl in the early 20s refuses vision. And she wanted to be blind. And the conclusion I came in, and in a way I've seen it, it's a repetition of human body. All her life she was looking for attention. And blindness gave her the attention. So the satisfaction of existence was fulfilled. Because when she was blind, people were carrying her around, giving her attention. Do you need help? Do you want this? Do you want that? And it's a very strange position. So you create conditions that visions become possible. There are people in Belgium, again, Keshe Foundation, people who used to be there, they can tell you, we did this with a member of the, what do you call it, family in Saudi Arabia. We could not ship the system to Saudi because of the restrictions. I was told by the Saudi ambassador I cannot go because of my passport situation. One of the Keshe Foundation members at that time flew to Dubai, and these people flew into Dubai, they received the system. And with the system, there is a member of the family of the governing rules party that they have a 13-year-old girl, blind, totally white eye, which means the eye is white. And within a matter of weeks, she could see colors, blue, red, and green, with no, what do you call it, the brown piece on the eye. We facilitated through a system that she could see. And then again, she refused to use it. Because by seeing, she was told, you have to do what now you see, you can do it. And she preferred not to use the system. You got to understand the need of the man and how man comes. So for that reason, I stopped a lot of research into eye development. But you can adjust the eye to see different things. Even you don't have the brown piece or the hole in the eye that you can receive light, you can create that the tissue of the eye become transparent to see things. And if you use this property in what we said, we make the universal tank that you can see entities, we create that condition. And amazingly enough, we are reaching that kind of process very rapidly. They need our technology, as we've done with the Japanese government and the universities in South Africa and other institutes around the world. We give you our understanding, our data, and our work freely to you. So you do not see us as a danger to take over your market. We give you a new market with much more application. So in a way, we invite pharmaceuticals, health authorities, and other institutes to come in and work with us, because at the end of the day, you're going to be benefit by it.
In the future, we'll teach. There is a process within the liquid of the eye that you can adjust to see different dimensions that the neural system can understand.
I have written a paper, which part of this paper is from book number 4, which now I adapted it to be released today, and it's done exactly the same as I told you a few weeks ago. I've written the paper. Read the paper. The paper should be up in a very short time. It's called The Creation of Motion in Universe, which is never understood why stars and planets and the rest move, and how electron happens to be in rotation and moving and everything else. This I explained to the knowledge seekers in the past 48 hours or 24 hours, and now I released the paper with it immediately. Look at the structure of the paper. If you think you can translate the information into a picture or a different way of understanding, draw your picture, send it back to the Keshe, the webmaster at Keshe Foundation, and then we look at it. And if it fits to go, it'll go in the paper. We add to it. Even as I said, it takes you understand a different way and somebody else understands a different way. We add to the pictures. We have no hesitation. So I think it's about 4 or 5 pages. If you want, and you want to translate or add your understanding to it, we can add to the paper with your name added to it, credited to you. So we are going as a collective knowledge seekers, developing that everybody can understand. This paper is on site, and if you want to read it and then tell us you want to change or you want to add, or I've done a spelling mistake, which is normal with me. I don't know if boxes are bosses or bosses are boxes are bosses. So because I write so fast, I just press the what do you call it, correction dictionary, and I pick up the wrong one, and then it happens to be there. So now we're going to what we said. You become part of the editors, auditors of the papers which the foundation is releasing, and put your knowledge to it, what you understand from it. And in this session this morning, I will explain this, because this is fundamental. This is one of the cornerstones of physics which was never understood, how motion is created in, what do you call it, in the universe.
From meaning. In the present life, we stick to the matter condition and we follow Newton's law. Newton understood the concept of the motion fully, and what leads to another motion. We know the first, second law of Newton, and we follow that, and this is more or less the basic knowledge of man about the motion. But Newton only could teach, understood the matter level of entities. As I said, plasma is a new technology. We don't even call it physics, we call it the plasma technology, science of plasma. In the world of plasma, be it the sun or combination of plasma's interaction, which is totally magnetic gravitational field, in a condition of freedom, which means they are free to follow the way and the path they are given or they have chosen. So what happens? In a star, like let's say our sun, we have a principle, the main, the storage, the house, the main house of the magnetic fields. And as these magnetic fields open up, like an unwinding of a spring of a clock, the field spreads spherically across and boils to the top. It doesn't just appear at the top, it boils to the top. It just literally opens up and opens up till it gets to the top. And in this process, the field interacts with another fields which are slower, faster, or similar to, and this process creates attraction and repulsion. Attraction of the two fields which are in opposite polarity, we call it, which is two entries or two exits when the two magnetic fields interact. When the entry of one interacts with the exit of the other, this creates attraction, or what we call gravitation. And when, by accident, as one is moving, now the end of the one which was entry interacts with the entry of the other one, so it becomes a repulsion. So one field at the same time is interacting with another field, but repulsing with another field on the other end of its line. But in a spherical shape is layers by layers. So it's very much like when you have an orange and then you have a peel on the top. The inner side, the inner part of the orange is an entity on its own and interacts with the magnetic field of the peel. One is moving and one is not moving. And this, or moving slower in a way compared to the center. And this repulsion of the two fields creates what we call magnetical. And the two attraction ends, we call it gravitational. So one entity, while is interacting with the other one to gravitate to, is getting repulsed by the same end of its own entity, by the entry end, by another object. So one pulls and the other one pushes. So this creates a motion in the field. It's the same with the layers of the sun. The plasma gets interacted and attracted by one and another, and in this process it gets pulled and pushed, and this leads to the creation of the motion of the plasma. We have a layer of a plasma which is going, for example, in its own way, but interacts with another layer. So this is going this way, and the other layer is going that way. So, but the other layer beyond it is going in this way too. So what happened? This, in respect to this, creates a gravity. And this, in respect to this, creates magnetical or repulsion. Notice that I use the term magnetical. Magnetical means repulsion or a field force which is created by interaction of two similar pole magnetic fields, where the other end is connected to attraction point, and that's how the motion created. These two are pushing this way, and these two are pulling. So you have the attraction inward, we call it gravitation or gravity, and the repulsion of these two we call magnetical. Why we call it magnetical? To show entity is not magnetic field, but it's a field from the interaction of two magnetic fields. And then when you have a gravity, gravitational fields, because it's usually in the center and it's close and it gravitates, means doesn't lose much field. So gravitational fields by nature are always usually more powerful than the magnetical fields, because gravitational fields brings all the fields, even from the other places, as they become to its strength, absorbs. But magnetical field spreads out and it gets weaker and weaker. So gravitational fields always stays stronger because it doesn't dissipate, doesn't spread out. And when you take the gravitational field away from the magnetical field strength, you get the mass of the entity. But this mass, as we have seen, has created its own motion. Now it behaves as a plasma. And this plasma is very simple. It has again itself an entry point and an exit point. And what happens? Now this entity has to interact with another plasma of the same, with the same entity, entry and exit. And another one, which is by accident could have an exit and an entry. So now you see the two interact, create gravity, and the two interact and create magnetical. Now in the solar system we speak about layers of the plasmas of different strength interacting. and it's millions of layers, and they're all at different strength. That's why they're in different layers. As the strength of the magnetical gravitational field of a layer reduces, the stronger push it out. So the principal matter stays in the center, what we call the powerful one. And the layer by layer, they become weaker in gravitational and magnetic field strength, till at the point where both gravitational and magnetic field come to a balance. And at that point of balance, what we call 1G is the surface and the physical boundary of the entity. Now you have on this side of it G, gravity increasing, and on this side of it, magnetical field increasing to a point. And when the magnetical and gravitational field in some point become to the point that the gravity becomes to the point of near very little compared to the magnetical, this becomes the atmosphere, or what we call Coulomb's barrier of the entity. This is important. This has never been understood. This is how we saw the motion created, because one field follows the other one. It's the same with this. In a layer, in a plasma, in the reactors you create, you have, these are ganses of copper oxide, and these are ganses of CO2. So they try, the weaker gets attracted by or gets influenced by the stronger, and if you have a Cu again, the same thing happens. So a plasma in your reactors does not need motion. It's already interactive, like the sun. But the most important point is how gravitational fields and magnetical fields dictate the life of the entity. This is absolutely vital, and it's not understood. This is what we call nuclear decay. This is what we call the supernova in a bigger size for a star. This is what we call end of the man's life. In a nuclear decay, we get one neutron dividing into two more plasmas, one plasma. In the body of a man, when the physical part detaches from the emotional part, the body goes to decay and divides to thousands and millions of other atoms. So man divides to more because he has more of. But it's a matter-gas state, so it ends up with matter-gas state. In the solar system, when the sun explodes and it cannot do, it becomes what we call supernova. And it becomes smaller and smaller particles, and the sun divides itself to two new suns. But we do not usually see or want to see what is the next sun, because we always look at the point of entry. So there is no difference between the point of what I call conversion from one entity to another. Man, when it dies, it does not end. It just converts and reaches new level to live in another dimension. So, in fact, how this comes about is very, very simple. As we spoke, a plasma has a both gravitational and magnetical field, which this gravitational magnetical field, due to variation in different strength in the plasma of different fields, in interaction with the gravitational magnetic field strength, which what we call magnetical, creates what we call a pulse. Because all the fields are not the same, the stronger are trying to catch up with the weaker, and the weaker with the stronger outside, this creates what we call magnetical pulse. So the entity has a heartbeat, be it the life of the man, be it the life of the planet, be it the life of a star, be it the life of a solar system, a galaxy, or a universe. As we feel the beat of our body because of the gravitational magnetic pulse, which is collectively we call a heartbeat, the same thing happens with a neutron. Neutron has a heartbeat too. Earth has a heartbeat. Once man goes beyond space, we'll see it. We see the heartbeat of the stars, and this is how it's created. as their gravitational magnetic field tries to connect with magnetical fields, this interaction of different strength fields, it creates a motion. It creates a heartbeat. This heartbeat, which is expands and contracts, plus the motion, which is the fields inside the plasma are creating themselves, leads to the rotation of the plasma. So this is for the first time we understand how the motion of a plasma, a star, a neutron starts. The universe rotates in the same principle, but with a lot of galaxies and a lot of planets inside it. And these galaxies and planets, if the plasma physicists understand, this is what they call the God particles. So we are all part of the God particles. Because man looks at the plasma of a proton and he calls it God particles. When it manifests itself as matter in a galaxy, we call it stars and planets. So we are all God particles and we all get affected by the attributes of God. Now, it comes when this process ends, and why a neutron or a body of a man or a star divides. The reality of the end or division comes when, as we said, gravitational magnetic field has the maximum more power, more stronger gravitational field than the magnetical. But an entity like an electron or a proton lives in an environment which is active, which means continuously at the boundary this element interacts with other entity, other atoms, other protons, other electrons. So it gives fields and it receives fields. And when it enters a point where it can influence its fields, is stronger than the other entities, so it gives more. We've seen this with the plasma test of 129 Tesla. The reason we saw 129 Tesla was because the other reactors in the lab were demanding, so the field was giving, and so we absorbed high resolution of directional flow of plasma in Teslas. Now, when so much is given continuously, it reaches a point where the gravitational magnetic field strength reaches magnetical field strength. And literally what it is, if you look at it, I try to explain it, is one is pulling the other one. This one is gravitational field, my hand on the left, if I can come in and see it. And this one is the magnetical. And when the fields become into balance, there is nothing to hold the entity together. And when, for example, gravitational field or magnetical field passes each other when there is a balance, there is no transparency. And if they are in balance in respect to the fields of their environment, you become dissolved. It's like a sugar in a hot water. The plasma opens up, but still has a center which has its integrity together. And so this opening up suddenly leads to a drop in the field strength in different ways, and the neutron splits into proton and electron. So the division or the demise, the end of the life of a man or electron or a star comes when gravitational magnetic fields and magnetical magnetic fields, they come and cross each other, when there is no difference between the two. And not being in difference with the two, you don't have a surface. The surface disappears. The physical entity, where we spoke at the beginning as the surface of the entity, becomes open and equal to its environment, so it opens up. A solid sugar in a hot water and a solid sugar in a cold water. When you put a solid sugar in the hot water, it just opens up because its strength is equal to the strength of the heat of the water, so it opens up, it dissolves. This is exactly what happens with neutron. So it opens up but at the same time the fields inside are strong enough, they try to collect and come together, so it leads to the division of the neutron. The same thing happens with the sun. The same thing happens when the emotional magnetic field of the man with physical magnetic field of the man interface, and there is none left, or they disconnect because now there is no connection with the physicality in being the same strength, and that's when there comes the end of the life and division into new lives. So this is important to understand, and it's vital, and this is why a lot of you are running into problem with running your reactors or understanding how you create energy. The energy, what you call, is gravitational magnetical field. And if you start building systems which absorbs or can operate with gravitational and magnetic fields in a what we call plasma condition, you will have much more powerful systems and lighting and energy production than your electron, because now you have to bring everything to a weakest point, electron, and you miss all the strong points on the above it. All the stronger magnetical fields are missed. So we work in what we call electrical current, which is the weakest. Man had to understand, so now we understand. Now we have to develop systems which work with proton, what we call the main plasma. This I was explaining yesterday to knowledge seekers. When, for example, you put 4 atoms of uranium together, you come nearly to 900 and something. This is the number of protons and neutrons in the center. But if you put all the electrons of this together, it does not even make 1 proton. And most of the energy of the electrons, when you become a molecule in a GaNs state, become the energy which is used for bringing the whole thing together. So electrons in the plasma technology does not, especially when you go to a GaNs state, consider as much, because they're so small, and all their fields is used for amalgamation and separation and division. So in the nuclear state, when the gravitational magnetic fields and gravitational, what we call magnetical fields balance out or become equal in the strength, in comparison to the environment which they are in, leads them to open up. And that opening up sets up the division. And the minute some residual are left, the entity becomes unbalanced compared to environment, and it comes back together, and then you get the proton. And then what is left comes together again and becomes an electron. In supernovas, a star explodes because it cannot hold the balance between magnetical and gravitational fields, and it opens up into the plasma of itself, into the plasma of this galaxy. The same thing happens with the galaxies. When they cannot hold the magnetical gravitational field, they open up in the universe. And the same thing happens to universes. So the theory of Big Bang does not exist. And a lot of people, especially religious people, now they try to confirm the theory of the Big Bang to be correct, because now they know their own structures on the rocky ground. Because now we understand the essence of the creation, and we don't need communication with the people who are agents. The intelligence of man has reached the level of the prophet of the past. So we don't need agents for the prophet of the past. Now the man has the intelligence to understand the same. This does not mean that the prophet of the past did not understand. They understood, but they could not explain, as the man wasn't intelligent. Now with the new science and developments, man is intelligent. At least a portion of men are intelligent enough to spread, to explain to the others, that the rest come to the same point. This comes to a point of teaching about the cores. Yesterday we were sitting here, and as you know, Arman is trying to get the system moving, and it's not moving the way it does. And I was explaining to him the reason why he will not fly. The reason why will not reach that point. Because as a developer and a maker of the reactors in space, we do not absorb any fields from our environment, hardly any, especially when you're going at high speeds. So the reactors are not there just for the motion. The reactors are the essence of the creation, where the reactors as matter produce the plasma of the free plasma, and that free plasma is the source of life for every entity, every living things on board. So the people who develop reactors for space technology, they become, and they have to understand how correct, just, and be like the creator. Because this plasma, free plasma, gives the energy for food, for clothing, for life, for every material man needs in space. The responsibility of the future operator reactors developers is not just creating the reactor, but knowing that what they create in conjunction with the others become the source of life. They become and they behave, and what they produce in these reactors become the source of life for the others. And now people understand why I always said bless your reactors before you start. Because in blessing, and if your intentions are correct, you give the essence of life to the other entities which use the system to survive in the space. And I keep on telling to knowledge seekers, read the last 2-3 paragraphs of the paper about motion. And if you understand that, you understand the whole essence of creation and why we are here and what it happens. We will not fly till the man understands flight is a physical point from man's point of view. The whole structure is very simple. Life lives within another life, and in living gives life to the one which gave life to it. The reactors in the space program, in the spaceship, as much as they collect the fields to make the free plasma condition for transfer to what you need, bread, water, air to breathe, they collect what is in their environment that they can add to their own strength, that they can add to the free plasma. Now you understand why it says, I made man the image of myself. Because it's a cycle of process of receiving to be able to give. And the more you give, the more you receive to give. Because you feed yourself. So a stupid man shoots himself in the leg, as I say, and goes on another marathon, knowing he's lost. He's a loser before he starts. And this is a process of the creation at every level. This is what we explained yesterday in children's program. When you kill a man, then you have to eat the man. When you kill a man, and it's become the habit of the man, if they understand, people, what it means, now you create a division. This division becomes warm, the birds eat it, becomes fertilizer, oil, the grass grows, the cow eats it, and then so you eat the same man you killed. Would you like to eat another man, or would you like to be eaten by another man? This is what we say, the time has come for world peace. When the man realizes there is no need for war, because what you kill you have to eat, you put a man in front of everybody and say, now eat. And see how they react. There used to be a program in the state where they used to get a very fat people, and they say, okay, you're 200 kilo overweight, and they used to put 200 kilogram of pure fat on another side of the scale, so this is you. And used to come home, how bad it is. I think we have to start putting the carcass of man on the streets and let the people eat it, and then they understand what's the use of killing to eat what you kill. And this is what I was explaining to early this morning. We do not need to eat to end alive, to live. With the new technology we have in the space, we absorb the fields which allows us to sustain space life. Eating is a habit of man because he can prove his power. But now with this technology, we all have the same power. The knowledge will be spread in a way that, as I always said, the man in Africa, in the back jungles of South Africa, will have the same knowledge, the same technology in his hand, as does a king in the palaces. And that's what I say, and the people don't understand, and more I start realizing, why should one be over the other? Unless you're a king when you can serve, not the king that they feed me. The seat of kingship is finished because man has become intelligent, that we are all equal. You look at the structure of a plasma, in a way on the upper surface of the earth we say is done. But it's not aligned, it's mixture, it's a depth. Is the depth of the interaction between the fields. And so, for example, the light on Earth is not created on one thin layer. It's very much created the way you see it here. Because there are stronger fields which penetrate further. By the time they lose some of their energy, they become in strength equal to gravitational magnetic field of the Earth, that they create light. So this, what you see here as a light zone, this is exactly what happens in a universal system. So, okay, this is now goes back into other teaching which we did before in some of the workshops. That I always explain that the glands are part of the brain structure, and if you, yes, the pineal glands and pituitary glands are the communication line between the emotion and physicality. One is for the emotional part of the um, gland, and the other one is for the physical part of the gland. So they carry two information to the brain itself, because it's as I explained, and I go back on it that just to refresh, is that the glands are part of the brain, and because the function of the organ is so heavy, instead of reporting everything back to the brain to operate, the can you hear me?
I can hear you on Skype.
Yeah,
But
we
I don't
can
know
hear you.
about your live
Yes.
stream.
You can
Yeah,
hear, yeah, okay,
we
because
can hear
earlier
you.
told me don't. So is the live, is your live stream which is not on? Is the live stream on, muted, or is it working?
The live stream went out for me too, also.
It seems to be okay in live
Is
stream.
it okay?
Yep, I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
You're
back
okay
on.
now.
yeah, I've
So,
tested
okay,
on
good.
live stream here
So
too. It's
we're gonna
good.
go back. That's good. Okay. So we go back to, if you missed anything, as we said, the glands are part of the brain system, and in a way, brain, instead of receiving continuously information about the operation of the organ, it has played its own headquarters on top of it, and we call it glands. That's why the gland sits outside the kidney, over it. That's why we have glands in certain positions for every organ, or every operation of the number of systems around the body. And or we have a headquarters that operates overall. So glands are actually the structure of the brain. And for brain to put a boss over a working of a system, then all these bosses need to report to the headquarters, but not to the top boss. So they go through the pituitary gland and the other one. And one controls the physicality change wherever the function is important for the survival of the emotional part of the brain has put a spine in the system or a subdivision to control it, that no harm comes to the emotional part. Because if the emotional part is damaged or stops working, in conjunction and in equilibrium as a twin star with the physical part, this is the end of the physical life. This is what you call death. This is what yesterday I was trying to explain to Armin. He has understanding that everything has to be perfect, and if it's not perfect, there is something somewhere. But you have to understand, the second you are born, you are destined to die. We are born to die, to develop the structure of the soul of the man. Death is the attribute and the beauty of the Creator, which gives for the recycling of the information and spread of knowledge across the universe. And because he is the possessor of totality, he is invincible, because he owns and he just converts. As I always say, God is the creator and the man the converter. So when you have glands and you have substation of control like pineal gland, pineal gland, is to operate how they have to react to the emotional part of the brain in respect to the organ, in respect to the glands which is placed in there, and how they have to interact and inform the physical part what to do with what they need. It's very much, as I say, it's like a chef which is a cook for everybody else, but then he goes to a hotel to get, or to a restaurant to feed and eat somewhere else himself, because he still needs feeding. The structure of the life in a human body is a progressive development of the need of the man according to the intelligence of the man in respect to his environment. So as now our intelligence changes and demands a new vision for us with the new knowledge we gain, our human body will evolve to adapt for the vision of what is needed to be done.